So today is day 11 of the month of Elul, and we're making our way towards Rosh Hashanah. And I thought I would just reflect on a story. You could see the full story if you're receiving our Pearls of Elul in its written form. But this is a story about two kids. One who's been living out in the country her entire life, and the new guy who moves out to a farm nearby, having grown up in the city, is now living out in the country. And the girl who's been living in the country her whole life is told about this new guy who's come to the area, and she decides to go over to introduce herself. And as she goes out there, they're kids, and she says, well, he's out back and he's practicing archery. And sure enough, he comes up, and there's one target on the side of the barn that he's shooting at. If you've ever done archery, you know that you usually shoot at a target, but instead the entire side of the barn is filled with targets. And inside of every target, at the bullseye, there's an arrow. And she looks at it and says, wow, that's incredible. He says, well, they're about to tear this old barn down, and I thought that I'd just come out here and I would shoot some arrows. She said, well, this is quite amazing. She thinks to herself, and she goes home, and she says, look, if I'm going to hang out with this guy in the future, I better practice my archery. And sure enough, she goes out, and not only does she miss the target, but she almost misses the barn each time that she shoots, and maybe it just hits like on the side of the barn on one side, the side of the barn on the other side. And she's feeling to herself, I'm going to be embarrassed if I go back to hang out with this guy. And so she practices up, and she's even getting better and better at hitting the target. Well, I want to fast forward in the story and take you to the part where they're back together. And she takes the bow up in her hands, and she shoots, and she hits onto the target. And again, she's somewhat nervous while doing this. And the guy goes, that's incredible. And she says to him, she goes, what do you mean incredible? I mean, you hit the bullseye every single time. He says, wait, you think that I hit the bullseye every single time? No, what I did was I just shot a bunch of arrows at the side of the barn, and then I went over and I painted around the arrows, the different targets, so that it made it look like I hit the bullseye. This is an amazing story. On the one hand, she thought that he had been a perfect shot. On the other hand, she was, quite honest about what he was doing. It's not that he was not being honest. We just didn't know the entire story. And he says to her, look, you don't have to be perfect. I'll tell you what, and this is what he shares with her. First off, he says, I wish I was as good as you were. But I'll tell you what I do know, that you aim for the center. But sometimes you're going to miss, because no one can be perfect all the time. And when you do miss, just remember to take a deep breath, to let it go, to adjust, and to try again. I'm interested in your thoughts on this story. I'm interested, maybe you have a similar story to tell, or maybe a joke or something like that. But be that as it may, I hope that this is a good day in the month of Elul. And I think that it's all good for us to remember that we don't have to be perfect each and every time. But it's important for us to at least try.